So I decided to force myself to get out and walk because I didn't know that the senior center closed early on Fridays, and it would be too hot to walk in the house. So I decided to get out here and walk. I'm feeling a little bit sore. I'm feeling a little bit sore, stiff and sore from working out 3 days in the gym straight. And I think the walking it out will help me not be so stiff. So this is the second time I've seen this. It says practice social distancing 6 feet. I don't remember seeing that on the cement before. I don't know if that's a CDC rule or if it's a security rule. Okay? So yeah. Now my leg is starting to hurt again. Damn it. I don't know. I think I can walk this quarter of a mile. Okay. So yeah, you know, because my father had such an ambitious business sense, right? Nobody really felt like he would need to, involve himself in illicit businesses, right? Because, why would you, right? Why would you risk a legitimate business just for the fun of it to see if you can get away with an illicit business? I wouldn't, okay? But obviously there are people who would. So then we found out that, my goodness, the entertainment industry really blew up in America and it started making all of this money, right? I mean, my first husband was talking about he's going to be a recording artist, a multi-instrumentalist recording artist who also does art, right? And I was like, yes, there are some people who make it big, but the majority of people out there, if they was relying on being an artist full time, they would be starving artists. Okay? So somehow, they managed, to pool their money together, right? They managed to have these, what do you call it? Exclusive private parties, right? Like, who was that weird guy who used to go to Vegas and he would rent out a penthouse, you know, Charlie Sheen, I think, would rent out the penthouse for like $12,000 a night. Like, what kind of party was going on here? Right? And now, you know, it's starting to come out that this is what has been going on. And people, they can't believe it. Some people, they won't believe it. Like, I was listening to this one lady, right? And she swears up and down that, oh, these aren't real men out here. They've been taken over by extraterrestrials or demons or whatever. Okay? And my thought is, listen, we're not going to worry about the spiritual where their act came from on the spiritual level at this time. We need to be concerned about their act that they're doing in the 3D and how it is affecting, you know, people's spirituality, right? Such as, you know, employers, you know, wanting you to do, you know, favors, you know, to get the job. Above and beyond, you know, the scope of the work. And then they'll point at that little sentence at the bottom, the little fine print that says, and other duties. Like what? And if you don't, you get micromanaged and you get pushed out. And that same philosophy has trickled down even into the warehouse where the men are, you know, flexing. Well, if you want a job, you know, we could have like 1 million people replace you, right? We hire thousands of people every day. What are you going to do to keep your job? Right? And it's despicable. Okay? It's very despicable. And yet, you'll have some other men who act like, oh, it's just a game. It's not a game, right? It's not a joke. You know, you keep your jokes at your house, not in the workplace, right? You keep your games on the video app, not in real life, dumbass. So anyway, I can always tell when I get, like these spiritual hits, right? Because it's like flies would come out of nowhere, you know, roaches come out of nowhere, like it just appears. Poof. I know you think it's crazy, but not so crazy when you try to figure out, well, where did it come from? How come you didn't see it approaching? How come it just appeared like, boom, there it is. And once I smash it and kill it, it's real. Right? And even the flies, right? Once you smash and slap the shit out of these flies, it's real. Okay? But where the hell did it come from? You don't have no open doors, nothing, no open windows. Okay? So how did it get here? Right? And I get that download that says, oh, it was a spiritual attack. Like, oh, okay. You know, whatever demonic spirit or whatever spirit, thought that they could take over a lower life form, you're dead now. Okay. The good thing about this little trail here is that it does challenge you with some, some hills. Some firewood there. It does have some little exercise equipment out here. Yeah, this wasn't here before. Practice social distancing. 6 feet. No. Maybe people had complained, that they were out here and, they felt uncomfortable that people would, walk upon them or walk behind them or, and had to be told, social distancing, motherfucker. 6 feet. Part of Kia dog. So yeah. I think I got my hammock in the car and I can go and sit by the lake and practice my pharmacy vocabulary. My pharmaceutical vocabulary. Cause now I'm thinking I might be, one of the preferred candidates because, I do get a food voucher from the government so they can get tax credit. But like I said, if I go to work, I don't want to feel ashamed of my body, ashamed of the way I look, ashamed of my health. So technically, you know, this thing that's implemented, you know, that people on assistance will either have to volunteer or, you know, do at least part-time work in order to qualify. Yeah. It can work and it can benefit the country for sure. Yikes. Ooh. As soon as I felt the sun, sweat started oozing out my face. Whew. So tomorrow, maybe before I head out, or today, before I shut my phone off,
the opening episode set.
I'll check and find out, you know, the hours of operation. Here, it looks like their gym is still open. Okay. So at least I did a little walk. So technically I did 2 little walks. One with the pity and one by myself. I think those are some kids who just left a water park. And they bring too much attention to themselves, you know, hollering at grown folks who are driving. Not a good idea. Because they might come across grown folks who are in a bad mood. I don't know why I say grown folks, but they might come across a grown-ass man who feels like they're in a mood to teach a teenager or a young adult a hard lesson. And that's who will generally teach them that hard lesson. And that's the one thing you have to remember when you're around men in general, is if they're in the mood to teach some hard lessons, it might not be a lesson you really want to learn, because it's a lesson of precaution, of, I mean, you name it. Whatever lesson you think is an unnecessary lesson, usually that comes from a man. A woman, she will teach you a lesson that you probably needed to learn, but not in a harsh and cruel way. Man, the harsher and the more cruel they can be, the more they seem to like it. While telling you it was your fault. You made them treat you that way. Okay. So yeah. I have made some videos, regarding like women who have been casted down into prostitution by men, stating that, I personally would believe the prostitute over any man, right? And that's why these men, they have to be, super duper cautious on how they behave out here in these streets, right? Because if they have a woman out here, willing to press charges against you, and you happen to be in her vicinity, and you didn't social distance yourself from her, then yeah. Social distancing is what, 6 feet? That's all. Because if you get social distance, if you social distance yourself from a woman by 6 feet, the most she could ever accuse you of is verbal abuse. That I did a little bit of exercise, and now I want to feel the wind off of the water to cool down a little bit, because my temperature gauge says it's still 90 degrees outside. Yep, 90 degrees outside. Ain't no joke. Some water mixed with some liquid IV. liquor store, the liquor store on the weekends is always busy. It's always busy on the weekends, right? And then men want to get uninhibited with the liquor. $3.16 there. $3.14 there. $3.19. Oh, gasoline is low. Ooh, it's low over here. Was supposed to be a Jehovah's Witness, I couldn't figure out how he knew the names and the faces of all of these popular porn stars, right? Because a lot of times the popular porn stars were casted into other movies, right? Because I remember, we used to like to go to the movies. And he would say, "Oh, that's so and so." I'm like, "Who is that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, she does porn." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I'll do a second thought, like double take, like, my gosh, is that what the Jehovah's Witness do? They watch porn, right? But of course, me being somewhat of a liberal-minded person, thinking that porn was just looking. It wasn't really the act itself. But for every look that's being looked on porn, there's also the act of violation being done on camera. All right? And I think it also feeds the male ego to think that, that they're men walking around here on 10, right? And that, the women can be receptive and wet and juicy, just because they know they're coming. Yeah. All very interesting to men to believe that. But the tripods, they already know. Ain't no way. Ain't no way they're gonna blister their tripod without it being wet and lubricated. Ain't no way they'll do that. They're like, oh no, right? They have more respect for their little, not little, comparatively speaking, they're not little. But oh my gosh, you know I was talking about little itty bitty ditty ditty dick, right? They started finding these videos of how they had said that Diddy was not a tripod, that he was actually a bitty, a itsy bitsy, right? Then they said that 50 Cent was just a little bit bigger. So this is what I'm saying. I'm like, I know as women, we're like, how did they even get into these kind of conversations? Well, they kind of get into these conversations because these men have to use urinals, right? And I know people will say, yeah, but that's not the full length, right? But that's still them on semi. Yeah, that's them on semi. So, if you're a tripod, your semi is probably going to be about 8 inches. It just is, right? If you're a bitty, your tripod is probably going to be about 4 inches. Oh wow, that church is offering coffee on Sunday morning. Sunset. Fireworks. July 4th. Independence Day. Okay. So that's next month. That's less than a month away. The 4th. So yeah. See if I got a nice little location over here that I can put up my hammock and just enjoy the breeze while reviewing my pharmaceutical terminology. Okay, so we're here outside sitting, watching the sunset. Okay, enjoying it too.